Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Tonight, let's go back. Not even, a little bit over 3 months ago. Remember what the topic was at the time? Zero Hedge pointed out the media is worried that too many Americans will question the legitimacy of the 2016 election, and they blame Trump. Now, at the time, he pointed out in the wake of Trump's recent rhetoric regarding the rigged system, the ruling class of the U.S. is peddling the fiction that somehow Trump's irresponsible sensationalism is solely to blame for the newfound feelings of illegitimacy plaguing our election. Isn't it amazing that things haven't changed that much? And of course, at that time, Politico was writing pieces like, what if Trump won't accept defeat? What if the left won't? What if Hillary Clinton won't? And of course, she is behind all this, along with George Soros and his color revolutions that we see. We've seen the same tactics. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to look at how the CIA, the FBI, and others are pushing this, the links at which they're going. Because now we've seen, as Jill Stein's attempt to try to question the legitimacy of the election has crashed and burned, now they're moving on to the next phase, which involves, of course, the CIA. They pointed out at the time, according to corporate media, the only reason Americans think their elections are rigged in one way or the other is because Trump said so. It has nothing to do, he pointed out, with the DNC leaks that showed the Democrats manipulated the corporate media in favor of Hillary Clinton. Hey, that's rigging the election, isn't it? Oh, let's not pay attention to that. It has nothing to do with the superdelegates who get to override the voters. Now they're calling for that to happen with the electors at the Electoral College. It has nothing to do with the Republican establishment choosing to shut down Colorado's primary, handing all the delegates to Ted Cruz. Again, what they are now trying to do with the Electoral College. It has nothing to do with the now former DNC chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, admitting the role of the superdelegates was to fend off grassroots political challengers. See, we've seen the left, first after the election, say, that's not fair. We padded the election in the particular Democrat states, and she got 2 million more, 2.5, or whatever the number was that they finally finished up with. We need to shut down the Electoral College. Now they want to use the Electoral College to shut down the majority winning votes in the states that Trump won, like in Texas. Now, Donald Trump has not been silent about this. He came out and said, this is a story from Infowars.com, it's a conspiracy theory if we would have said that, isn't it? He said, can you imagine, this is what he tweeted out, can you imagine if the election results were the opposite and we tried to play the Russia CIA card? It would be called a conspiracy theory. Of course it would have. He says, unless you catch the hackers in the act, it's very hard to determine who was doing the hacking. Why wasn't this brought up before the election? And we have to ask, why is it that Jill Stein and the rest of the people who are now complaining were completely silent and pouring water, not just silent, but pouring water on any questions about things that would invite fraud systematically into the system? The things that they've done to shut down voter ID so we could have voter fraud. The things that they have done to expose us to potential hacking in the electronic voting machines. Nothing was ever said about that. And of course, Jill Stein admitted that she had no proof that anything had happened. And now we see, as the CIA comes out, he says, we have no proof that anything happened, but we should maybe have another election. We should take a look at this. He goes on to say, in this election, as things stand, this is Steve Watson, absolutely no evidence has been produced to substantiate the claims. Who needs evidence, okay? What's more, the FBI has labeled the CIA claims as fuzzy and ambiguous. In other words, we've been told they're circumstantial at best. We've been told in the past, this is what they started saying from the beginning, well, we know that somebody got into the DNC leaks, and we know that Russia uses that same method. Everybody does. Any hackers do, including our own government, uses the same method, and they all disguise themselves by routing the attempts through various countries. And then they say, and also Russia had a motive to do this. Well, you know what? Having a motive to do something doesn't make you guilty. Where is the evidence? We don't need to see the evidence, they say. The Washington Post suggests the disagreement between the CIA and the FBI stems from a cultural difference between the two organizations. They say the FBI, quote, wants facts and tangible evidence to prove something. Oh, why wouldn't you want that to prove something? But the CIA is more comfortable just drawing inferences. Wouldn't that be a conspiracy theory? It does sound a lot like a conspiracy theory. And of course, Donald Trump was spot on. And it's not just a conspiracy theory that Homeland Security attempted to hack into the Georgia electoral system. They're now admitted this over the weekend. Homeland Security told members of Congress on Friday that a rogue federal employee may have been responsible for the November hack attack that targeted the Georgia Secretary of State's system. Oh, so it's not the Ruskies. It can also be our own government, our own Homeland Security. And remember, also over the weekend, we learned that the FBI sent plane loads of agents to Iceland to try to frame Julian Assange. And this was years ago. This came out in an interview with a Iceland official. The U.S. sent plane loads of FBI agents to Iceland in 2011 in order to frame WikiLeaks and its co-founder Julian Assange, according to a former Icelandic minister of the Interior who refused to cooperate and asked them to stop. This was back in June of 2011. The Obama administration, this is a report from RT based on the interview with the Interior Minister, former Interior Minister Jonason. He said that they had knowledge of hackers wanting to destroy software systems in the country. That's what the Obama administration said. Hey, we know about hackers, and we think they have targeted you, so we're going to come and help you. Sound familiar? Now, he said he instantly became suspicious, as you, the American voter, should be suspicious. He says he's well aware that a helping hand might easily become a manipulating hand. Oh, yeah, that says it all, doesn't it? That is a quote that needs to be enshrined right up there along with Ronald Reagan's, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." You may not be here to help me. You may be here to manipulate me. And he knew that was exactly what they were going to do. They point out then later that same year, in the summer 2011, the U.S., he said, sent a plane load of FBI agents to Iceland seeking our cooperation, what I understood as an operation to set up and frame Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And he goes on to say, since they had not been authorized by the Icelandic authorities to carry out police work in Iceland, and since a crackdown on WikiLeaks was not on my agenda, to say the least, I ordered that all cooperation with them be promptly terminated. I also made it clear they should cease all activities in Iceland immediately. And he goes on to say, if I had to take sides with either WikiLeaks or the FBI or the CIA, I would have no difficulty in choosing. I would be on the side of WikiLeaks. Why is that, folks? Well, it's because all of these protestations about the election and about whistleblowers and about WikiLeaks all are there to distract you from the crimes that they expose. See, nobody is talking anymore about what the DNC and what HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton, did to subvert the elections on the Democrat side. Instead, all they want you to focus on is their imaginary boogeyman, the foreigner, the Ruski, who did this. And of course, we had the British ambassador repeat again and reiterate one more time that he came to Washington and he met the people who said they released the information, that it was Americans who did this because they were tired of the corruption. See, it's not the Russians. I don't believe that. William Binney doesn't believe that. He has said so as well. But now we have it stepped up. We have a former CIA operative calling for a new round of voting again. He says, intelligence agencies conclude Russia interfered with the elections. Did they really? Let's see what he really says, because he doesn't really say that. He says, if we had been caught interfering in European elections or Asian elections or anywhere around the world, those countries would call for new elections. Any democracy would. And of course, this is former CIA operative Robert Baer. Now, the CIA has been caught interfering in elections. They've been caught assassinating foreign leaders so they could establish coups in those countries. But they would never do that here in America, would they? Well, go back to 1963 for starters, and let's hope that they don't do it again. And of course, we've seen a lot of former CIA agents get involved in this kind of skullduggery. For example, the lieutenant governor here in Texas, Dewhurst, who spent all of his life working for the CIA for military intelligence. After he became lieutenant governor, he did everything he could to shut down the pushback here in Texas against the TSA's violation of our Fourth Amendment. Remember, that passed unanimously in the Texas House, and then this former CIA agent, Dewhurst, shut it down in the Senate, even having the federal government say that they would turn Texas into a no-fly zone. So they use these former CIA agents. So I guess once a CIA agent, always a CIA agent. When he expressed, where he was pressured, Baer, about the feasibility of holding another presidential election, he emphasized that the legitimacy of the government was in doubt. See, that's what this is all about. It's about casting aspersion on the legitimacy of the election, on the legitimacy of Donald Trump as president, to portray him as an authoritarian interloper, a foreigner. That has been the tactic that has been used by Soros's NGOs throughout these color revolutions throughout former Soviet Union, throughout Eastern Europe. They say, while conceding that he wasn't sure how it would work constitutionally. I mean, who cares about the Constitution, right? He's a CIA agent. They don't care about our constitutional government any more than they care about the constitutional governments that they've overthrown around the world. And of course, the left is standing there applauding this. Absolutely amazing. Then he says this, and I think this is very interesting because in this quote, he points out that he knows that this is a lie. I'm deeply disturbed by the fact, he says, the fact that the Russians interfered, and I would like to see evidence if the evidence is there. Now, if it is a fact, then there is evidence. And if you haven't seen any evidence, if there's evidence there, it's not a fact. See, this is what is truly disturbing about this. And at the core of what he's saying when he's just talking, he lets it slip, almost a Freudian slip, showing that it is nothing but a conspiracy theory by the CIA to try to undermine our own elections in this country. Now, understand how this is playing out. Last Thursday, Hillary Clinton blasted what she called the epidemic of fake news. Now, that's significant in terms of the timing we can now see in retrospect, because it was last Thursday, as Hillary Clinton was saying, the epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that has flooded social media over the past year is now clear. The so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. She said this on Thursday. And as she said it on Thursday, the Republican and Democrat establishment was putting into the NDAA a measure that would essentially allow the State Department to become the Ministry of Truth. And they passed that the very next day on Friday. So they quietly, as she was talking about the epidemic of malicious fake news, put this in. Now, those of you who have been watching us for a number of years know that this goes back several years. It was 2013 that they removed the prohibition of Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, repealing the Smith-Mundt Act, which prohibited them from propagandizing here in America on the media in the way that they do in other countries. They removed that prohibition. And we said at the time, this was coming. Then we said a year ago, as Matt Drudge was here, he pointed out, this is coming. He said, I've had a Supreme Court justice tell me that they're coming after you. This was always in the plan. This is not a reaction to this election. What they had to do was they had to insert Donald Trump here because they have to come after him. But if Hillary Clinton had won, they would have done the same thing that they are now doing. You have to understand, Senator Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, who first endorsed Donald Trump and then, as an October surprise, said, I'm unendorsing him. I can't endorse this guy. He is the guy who wrote this fake news bill. And of course, what is this? They're going to come up with fact-based narratives. They're going to spend $180 million to create a global engagement center under the oversight of the State Department. And they're going to fund and train local journalists. Does that cause you concern? The idea that our government, our federal government, is going to train journalists? How insane is that? But this is their own description. They're going to provide grants and contracts to NGOs like the ones that have been used in color revolutions by George Soros, civil society organizations, think tanks, private sector companies, media organizations, other experts outside of the U.S. government. They're not outside of the U.S. government. They are representatives of the U.S. government. And then look at this other rhetoric that we have here. CNN's Stelter says Trump win is a national emergency. They're trying to create the conditions for a civil war. And again, it begins with the illegitimacy of the election that they must establish with the press. And in order to do that, they must shut down independent free thought. Social media, independent media, that all has to be shut down. And again, look at the language that they use. Trump's win undermined our democracy, he says. He says that's the ultimate goal of Russian disinformation, to undermine democracy, to undermine faith in our institutions like the media. Now we're back to where we were in August. Remember, it was Donald Trump who was undermining the integrity of our elections when he says, hey, we've got some systemic problems here that we ought to take a look at and do something about it before the election. Oh, no. Don't you dare question how we conduct elections. You would be undermining our democracy. And now they are coming after the very foundations of our elections and our Constitution. We see that a congressman is now begging the Electoral College voters to block Trump This is a Democrat congressman from Connecticut. He says, we're 5 weeks from the inauguration and President-elect is completely unhinged. Why? Because he said that the NBC Nightly News is biased, inaccurate, and bad, point after point. He tweeted that out. Now, that would be the NBC News that had Brian Williams as anchor. Nobody would ever think that Brian Williams was inaccurate, would we? He is the poster child for the fake media, and now he is the person they're using to criticize so-called fake media, which is really independent media. Electors are now saying that they want a briefing on the Russian interference before the Electoral College vote. So now they want these same people that tried to frame Julian Assange in Iceland, the same people that have overthrown other governments. They want them to come in and give them a portrayal of this fake news, for which there is no evidence, according to Robert Baer, former CIA official. This is what we are now facing. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the next line of attack, and that is to say Donald Trump has a conflict of interest problem. Rand Paul pointed out this weekend, hey, you knew he had a lot of businesses when you voted for him. It's a bit unfair. Stay with us. Leanne and Owen will break that down when we come back.
Our fellow InfoWarriors across the United States and across the planet really love the Hillary for Prison 2016 shirts that we began to put out in 2015. It became a global meme against globalism and corruption, and a very strong maxim that's now being continued on today. Now, President-elect Trump has come out and said it's not his job as president to call for prosecution. He's not supposed to. But that obviously Jeff Sessions, as the new Attorney General, if he's confirmed, will certainly carry out his duties. But Roger Stone a few weeks ago, right after the election, said, Alex, you got to bring Hillary for prison back. And I said, yeah, but it's a limited edition. It's over. You know, she's been defeated so far. And he said, what about Hillary for Prison 2017? We need those at the inauguration. They're trying to intimidate Trump supporters and nationalists everywhere. That shirt is powerful. It's not just a shirt supporting Trump, like your shirt that says Trump is my president, which we put out before he won, predicting it, putting our name, our guts on the line, but something exposing who the other team was pushing so that people don't forget and so that the push for justice continues. So it's a great way to support the broadcast. It's a great way to have another historic shirt to spread the word and to meet like-minded people of every race, color, and creed who bleed red blood and want justice. It's available. It's another limited run. I don't know how long we're going to offer it, but definitely only a few months. It is Hillary for Prison 2017, and here's the biggest and best part I almost forgot. This shirt arrived in an 18-wheeler, printed right here in the USA a week ago, and I forgot. I've been so busy to even talk about the fact it's been in the store. That on the back of the shirt is a design that I worked on with some of our great graphics people that is George Soros as a goblin. I made a goblin joke a year ago about Trump, saying you better not, actually get in bed with the goblins if he has to work with politicians, but I understand if he has to actually, get knee-deep in their political guts, but he just can't get caught in bed with a goblin. So we now have George Soros, because the media attacked me on this whole goblin meme, and they've made huge jokes about it, but it's totally blown up in their face. We now have George Soros as a goblin on the back, and it says, with a cross through him, an X like Ghostbusters, no Soros, him as a goblin. It says deport Soros on the bottom, and on the top it says Infowars established 1996. So it is a limited edition, deport Soros on the back, Hillary for Prison on the front, right-hand shoulder, Infowars.com. It's powerful. Hope you get out to everybody you know. Infowarsstore.com or call 888-253-3139. So to all the fellow liberty lovers around the world, I salute you and thank you for your support. This shirt is a celebration of the fight and the victory we've seen in 2016 against tyranny, but looking forward for justice against George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and their entire criminal network. And don't forget our new motto, no more pizza parties.